Hi, this is Michael William Denny of ThunderShamanism.com, and today we're going to be talking again about the significance of Halloween from a shamanic perspective. And in the previous video, if you haven't, go ahead and watch that. We talked about some of the origins of Halloween. I gave you some links to your own personal ritual that you can do on Halloween. It's the best time of the year because the veil between our world and the spirit world is at the thinnest, and it's the best time of the year to connect with the ascended masters. So I give you a ritual that you can do in order to connect with the ascended masters and be blessed by them. So I want to talk to you more about historically what this time of year meant. In the previous video we talked about that there's an energetic science behind this, that multiple cultures all around the world who have no recent ethnic or cultural connection all believe that this time of year is when you can talk to the ancestors. The Day of the Dead, that comes from Native American traditions in Central America, where they knew that this time of the year was when you could talk to the recently deceased. And that's why people walk around with skulls and skeletons, because actually the natives would keep the skeletons of their ancestors, sometimes underneath their home, and they'd bring the bones out and they would talk to them and worship them and all that kind of stuff. And the idea was that the ancestors could come and talk to you. It's a very sacred time. It wasn't frightening at all. We talked about the Alfablot, which in the pre-Christian Germanic tribal traditions in Scandinavia and in northwestern Europe, this was the time to talk to the ascended masters, who are the high ancestors of human beings. It was a time of the wild hunt. It was the time of Odin, and it was very, very holy, very sacred. And I'm going to share with you what it meant to them by recounting to you something that we know actually happened in history. So in around 1000 AD, most of Europe had completely converted over to Christianity. There was only one major part of Europe that hadn't converted, and that was Scandinavia. Scandinavia and Iceland were still following the ancient pagan traditions, and it was very slow going with them. They did not want to let go of their traditions. Now, let me just give you an idea of what was going on at this time. Bear in mind, it wasn't just a bunch of people sitting around kind of like our election going, who should I vote for? Should I vote for Jesus or should I vote for Odin? It wasn't like that at all. What was happening is that over the past 600-700 years in continental Europe, people who followed the indigenous shamanic paths of their ancestors were being butchered and killed. There are people who were choosing to convert to Christianity. There were people who were forced into converting into Christianity for monetary reasons. They wouldn't be able to hold jobs down or conduct business or be able to function, so they did it for those reasons. And then there were people who didn't want to convert, and they were put to death, sometimes in horrific ways. They were burned at the stake. Their flesh was peeled off of their bodies while they were still alive. They were crushed by stones. There's even, we've got historical accounts of people who are forced to swallow snakes and are killed that way. I mean, just awful, simply because they weren't given the right to follow their own religious path. So this was what was going on. But because Scandinavia was a little farther away, and they were still holding on to the old ideas, it was coming a little more slowly. So this is the backdrop for what I'm going to share with you during the time of the Alfablot. Now, in Norway, there were some Christians that were sent by the king of Norway into Sweden. I can't remember exactly why, to do some business or something like that. And they happened to do their traveling during the Alfablot, the elf sacrifice. And so these people, being Christians, either had forgotten about it or weren't paying attention to it or whatever it was that was going on with them. They would go to people's homes and knock on the door, and everybody that, because it was getting dark and it was starting to rain and they needed some place to sleep. And so they'd knock on people's doors, hoping, can I stay in your barn or whatever it was. And they were getting driven out with torches, with pitchforks, people throwing rocks at them, treating them like, in the source material it says chasing them off like they were wolves. And the reason why this is important to understand is because in the pagan Germanic tradition, one of the most sacred acts that you could perform was to give sanctuary to a visitor. And it was required of you by Odin. If somebody came to your door wanting food, clothing, refuge, you had to give it to them because you didn't know if it was one of the gods or not. You didn't know if it was a nature spirit. This was one of the biggest things connected to ancient Germanic spirituality, was that of hospitality. This is one of the reasons why the whole idea of being exclusionary to people of other religions and other races is not part of our ancestral tradition, because it was part of our ancestral tradition to be accepting and tolerant and gracious to everybody. But this time of the year was different. And the reason for that was because, as I said, there's this history of serious problems between Christians and pagans, and how the pagans had suffered horribly at the hands of Christians for hundreds of years. And during the Alfablot, you had to get the blessings of the ancestors. Now, why is this important? Here's something else we got to add to the story. In order to understand how sacred and how volatile this was to have Christians come onto your property during the Alfablot, we need to understand what would happen when somebody would convert to Christianity. And there was a historical source, I can't remember exactly offhand, but I remember reading about, it was a landowner in Scandinavia who had a good chunk of land. And because of political reasons, he had to convert if he wanted to, if he wanted to do business and all that kind of stuff. So out of the need to connect on a financial level, he technically converted to Christianity, which meant that the Catholic priest has to come onto your property and he has to do some prayers and some rituals, and he takes the holy water and he sprays it around everywhere. Now, understand that what was going on at that time, the tradition for tens of thousands of years in Scandinavia, was that the land spirits lived on your land to bless you. Also, the spirits of your ancestors lived on the land to bless you. The elves, the shining ones, lived on your land to bless you. And these various spirits lived in rocks and trees, and even in the house itself. There was, you would have an empty chair at the table for the house elf or the house spirit, who would supposedly help take care of things around the house. People would say that the clothes would get folded all by themselves, and and in exchange for that, you would give them a place at the hearth, you would give them a place at the dinner table, and you would treat them as a member of your family. But you've also got the ancestors, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, people who lived on the land, and their spirits were there on the land to help protect you. The Hammingja spirits, which means luck. You get your luck connected to your ancestors. So this is a very powerful tradition. Then you have this Christian priest who comes onto the land. He starts throwing holy water everywhere. And the sacred stones where the elves lived, or where the ancestors lived, he would go outside because he knew that that's where the demons lived, and he would sprinkle the holy water there. He would sprinkle it on the trees in the sacred forest. He would sprinkle it all around the house, because he knew that the place was filled with all these pagan evil spirits. So this guy goes through this process, probably not thinking too much about it. Maybe he wasn't a very religious guy. He's just going through the motions because he wants to be able to function in society and make money and blah, blah, blah. That night he goes to bed. And in his dreams, his ancestors, his direct ancestors that he knew, his father, his grandfather, came to him and said, "Why are you driving us away? We're here to help you." This is what Christianity meant. So now we go back to the story. Here are these Christians, they're knocking on people's doors, and they've got these big giant crosses on, and people can see immediately that they're Christians, and they know that these Christians are here to drive out the spirits, to drive out the earth spirits and the ancestor spirits. And this most holy of nights, when the ancestors are most welcome, they drive them off in anger. This is why. Because it represented to them, the cross coming up to the door represented the death of their spirituality, which had been taught to them for tens of thousands of years, going all the way back to the first human beings. So this is why Halloween is still part of us. This is why we still put on costumes. This is why we still do trick-or-treating. This is why we still do seances and all that kind of stuff, because we still have this connection. But if you want to get the most out of it, we've got to take it out of the gutter, which is where the church has put it. The church has taken away all of the sacredness of this day, this most holy of days, and turned it into a time of, just where we're dealing with ghosts and goblins and demons and zombies and possession and all that kind of, the worst part of what is connected to opening up the realm to the other side. So I've given you a ritual to the elves, to the light elves, which will connect you to the ancestors. And if you follow my directions, you will see you will have a tremendously powerful and uplifting experience connecting to the ascended masters of our race. So that's it for now. Stay tuned. Listen, I need your help. I'm going to be pushing to get this channel bigger and bigger and bigger. And I want to spend a lot more time giving these kinds of videos and giving you free stuff and teaching you things on YouTube. I want to devote my time to that. But in order to do that, I need your help. I need you to subscribe. I need you to like. I need you to tell your friends about it. I need you to help me get as much traffic to this YouTube channel as possible. So that's it for now, my friends. Until next time, may the blessings of the ancestors be with you this most sacred of holidays.